Hi guys, today we are talking about acquiring a desirable physique through training for and competing in Hyrox events. Now, before I get into the explanation or describing how I went from skinny to muscular as a result of training, I must stipulate quite strongly that everything in this video is from my own experience, right? I've been training for nearly 3 decades. I know my body very well. I know how it responds to stimulus, diet, training, all of it. This video is about how I changed my physique from sort of a runner's physique, sort of a slender, slim physique, to a more built, muscular physique. So Hyrox, if you don't know, is a very intense aerobic, anaerobic, and strength-based multi-station fitness competition, right? 8 exercises, 8 runs, all lumped together as fast as you can. It creates a very high demand on your body. So I guess the story must start with my first Hyrox. Manchester 22 was my first. That was 9 Hyroxes ago. I went to it off the back of a good running year. So I went into it slim and slender. I went into it with a high amount of aerobic capacity, but little strength and little threshold. So I obviously went there, competed, and sort of the wheels fell off when those components were required. When I was going to push the sleds, when I found myself with a maximum heart rate, I was obviously going to struggle. And although I came away with an above average time, it was below my own expectation, and I was a bit sad, right? 2 things happened that day. One, I obviously wanted to come back and beat that time. It's funny how Hyrox does this to you. Got 1 hour 22 minutes, which one day I may choose to come and beat once the pain has faded. Whether you do well or whether you do bad, chances are in both of these scenarios you're going to want to come back and get a better time. The second thing that I was really quite motivated about, when I went to my first Hyrox, I saw loads of great physiques, and this is because at Hyrox events loads of people run with their shirts off, and I was a bit astounded by this. Like, people had such high body confidence that they just didn't care, and that's probably because they had great physiques, right? So this was a secondary objective of mine. Yes, I was going back to outperform myself at the very next Hyrox event, but I wanted to come back and I wanted a physique to be proud of. I wanted something that I was confident enough to do the event without my shirt on. It sounds like a weird motive, but it's what was running through my head at the time, and so I committed to the training moving forward. So after that first Hyrox event, I came away and I knew that I had to adjust things on 2 fronts. 1, my training, and 2, my diet. So I'm going to talk about the training first. The first thing I had to do was have a little bit of a shufty around of my schedule. I had to have a look at it. I was running maybe 3 times a week and exercising in the gym twice. So the very first thing I did was swap a day's running into a day's training in the gym. So, and then I had to, within the gym, think about what I was going to be doing there moving forward. It meant moving away from the resistance parts of the gym, like the isolates, the weights machines, the dumbbell rack, the bench press, that whole room, the weights room, right? I had to move away from that. In our gym, it's divided up into 3 rooms, sort of upper body, weights, legs, and then the sort of free space room where you've got your sort of deadlifts and your squat racks, your sort of wall ball targets, the frames that you generally get in these gyms these days, the AstroTurf, that kind of thing. So I kind of set up camp in that side of the gym and sort of have spent almost the entire time somewhere between that room and the leg room. So my training needed a bit of an overhaul. I needed to concentrate on my weaknesses. Now remember, before I tell you anything that I did, this is simply what I had to do for me. This is not advice for you. Everyone comes at Hyrox initially from a different perspective. People will have different strengths and different weaknesses. Those weaknesses for me were in my legs at first. I had quite a high aerobic capacity through running, but if you run for a long time, lots of distance work, lots of speed work, you generally slim down, and that's true of your legs as much as any part of you. So I had to spend time strengthening them. That meant doing some of the bigger compound moves like squats and lunges, but also sort of ISO work on one leg or another, so taking it in turns with your legs. So it meant Bulgarian split squats and things like that, spending time on some of the leg equipment, though lots of work on your hamstrings, quads, glutes and calves, and then sort of applying that to the Hyrox movements later, such as like sleds and wall balls. So the very next thing I needed to address was my anaerobic and my threshold stuff. Basically spending more time at sort of the top end of my heart rate, right? The proper zone 5 territory stuff. And this was simply exposure to it, doing it as much as possible so I would become used to spending more time there, and if possible, inch it up a little bit through training. This sort of gym training work is disgusting at the best of times. But it is so present and prevalent in a Hyrox event that you'd be stupid to ignore it. So I did periods of this, and I would try to include at least one session of this type of work each week. Running. Okay, so this is something that you can still do outside, and this is something that I'm really quite good at and know how to train for. But with only sort of 2 days to do it, I kind of had to rotate through what I was doing. Typically, if you want to get better at running, you mix up how you run, and you include hills, you do intervals, you do long runs and you do short runs, you do slow runs and you do fast runs. There's like a lots of things you can do to get better at running. So I would generally rotate through those things as best I could. I would always include, say, a part run at effort, tempo or max pace, just to sort of keep that intensity high over a shorter distance. And then I would include some zone 2 stuff to ensure that my base was always sort of there. Now, one of the things that is super important, and it's something you don't really come across before you go into Hyrox, I certainly didn't, was compromised leg work, right? For those that are uninitiated, all this means is loading your legs to fatigue before you do some running. This can be done in any number of ways. It can be done through squats, through pushing the sled, through rowing quite hard. There's many exercises that can wear your legs out. The idea is that you start running with legs that are already tired. This happens at least 6 times in a Hyrox event. You leave the exercise station with your legs like jelly. You've got to learn how to run on them. Now, lastly, and probably the smallest component of what all of your training should be comprised of, is the exercise stations, right? It's very easy in the early days to get seduced by the 8 exercise stations. People absolutely go mental and rinse all 8. We're talking the ski, the row, the wall balls, the sleds. So many people simply do these things over and over again expecting to get better, but those kinds of exercises do not necessarily translate to additional strength or additional endurance. You may build up slight resilience to those things, but that's not the way to improve. It took me a couple of Hyroxes to figure that one out, but it's very much true. Try to resist doing endless amounts of Hyrox exercises. So on the other side of the coin, it is diet. Now, diet is a bit of a dirty word, and I wouldn't say I'm ever on a diet per se, but it's all about control and understanding what you're eating. Now, I firmly believe in calories in, calories out. Always have. Every single diet that's out there is just a dressed up version of controlling your calorie consumption. If you live your life in calorie deficit, which I try to do most days, or be close to, then that means that you won't be piling on additional weight. There's ways of working this out. You can work out your total daily energy expenditure, add on sort of your activity level, which is your NEAT, and then you can add on the very last little bit, which is your sort of exercise. Each day, like I said, I try to remain in calorie deficit. There are days that you don't, and that's completely fine, as long as sort of the net for the entire week you are sort of under what you are using. You won't be piling on any additional body fat. So that's just kind of the rule of thumb. And there's a few things you can do to sort of help with that. One of the best things I could advise anybody to do is meal prep. Sunday night, Sunday evening, Sunday afternoon, something like that. Get 5 Tupperwares out, cook 1 or 2 things in bulk on the cooker, and divvy them up into your Tupperwares. Put a couple in the freezer, put a few in the fridge, and you've got lunches for your entire work week. This means that you don't have to forage for food each lunchtime. You don't have to go find something, which will inevitably lead to you buying something from a shop and just being calorie dense. And it works out cheaper as well. There's loads of advantages to doing this. Now, one of the best bits of advice I can give with regards to sort of staying on track, not falling off the wagon, is accepting that you don't have to spend every single meal, every single day eating 100% clean. Now, I run a 6 and 1 when I'm trying to stay on track. 6 and 1 to me, it's a numbering thing, a ratio thing, whereby 6 days are completely clean or completely in calorie deficit, and I will have that last day where I can choose to eat something or drink something of my choosing, right? It means that there's something there at the end of any given week. I normally do this on, say, a Saturday, and it just means that there is a target, there is a treat. It doesn't matter what it is, it's there for me. Now, more often than not, I account for whatever I eat by doing additional exercise anyway. But knowing that that treat is there keeps me on the straight and narrow. So that Saturday night, I'll have whatever it is. And then the very next day, I'm meal prepping again. I'm starting the cycle anew. So it's a good habit to get into. It's very hard to eat 100% right, 100% healthy all of the time. By having a little tiny goal, it only needs to be 1 meal and maybe a few drinks. You're definitely not going to go over your weekly calorie deficit, which you've been working on the other 6 days in that one sitting. So having it is actually more important than you think. You are more likely to fail and buckle and fall off the wagon if you go teetotal from joy completely. Now, one of the things I do, and it sometimes gets criticized a little bit, like somehow I'm giving bad advice. For the most part, certainly on my 6 days, I run a 16-8 fast, right? A 16-8, it's not a diet, and it's come about more because I simply don't eat breakfast, and I don't have my lunch at work until 1 p.m. So I don't eat anything after sort of 8 p.m. at night, and I don't eat again until 1 p.m. the next day. And it just means that it keeps my calories sort of concentrated to my lunch, which I've made for myself, so it's healthy, and then I can eat really well in the evening around 5, 6, 7 o'clock when I have my main dinner. I can eat a large portion of food that I really enjoy because I'm still eating very, very well. I'm just choosing not to eat breakfast. We eat 3 meals a day because we've been taught to do that. It doesn't mean we have to do that. And fasting has been around for as long as eating has, and it has been proved to be very healthy on many fronts. So before you sort of jump on me for sort of giving bad dietary advice, it's really not. I'm eating plenty of food, I'm very healthy, and at the end of the day, it's worked. So one of the things I had to do was increase my protein intake. Now, as someone who hasn't eaten meat since 1986, I've had to source other ways of getting that sort of protein into me. This has meant dipping into sort of protein shake land. That means just 1 or 2 protein shakes a day. One of the great things I found out how to do was mix protein shake into fat-free yogurt, and it makes a lovely little like pudding, almost like Angel Delight. So yeah, increasing that protein take and just staying on top of quality carbs as well. It's very easy to think that if you cut out all carbs, everything's going to be fine, but you end up sort of looking a bit funny and feeling a bit funny. It's just important. Carbs are your friends. I never got truly into sort of macro counting. I know kind of what food I should eat. I know roughly the amount just through practice over the years. all of this sort of recommended daily amounts of your macros. There's loads of calculators online. Just go have a look, figure it out for a week, and then just sort of try to remember how much you've had. And that's a great bit of advice. Remembering sort of your portions and remembering how much is in each thing, so you're not forever having to count. Once you've learnt what each thing sort of gives you, you sort of go on autopilot with it a little bit, and you don't have to worry about it therefore after. So those are the things that I changed with regards to my diet and my training. Now, by the time I got to Birmingham, the very next event, my body had changed shape significantly, and most importantly, I'd got to a point sort of mentally where I was secure enough to take my shirt off and run that entire event without it on. Now, that's not to say that I wasn't a little bit insecure as I sort of poodled around that first event, but it was fine in the end, and I got some great photos out of it, and I did actually run it faster by over 5 minutes than the previous race. So win-win on that front. Now, I continued to train like this and eat like this, and my physique continued to change. And the very next Hyrox after that was Manchester again, an entire year after the first. And my physique probably has never been better than that particular event. I ran 2 Hyroxes that morning, and this was me after the second one. As you can see, my physique, I think that's when I was most happiest with it. And you know, that's now sort of my golden standard. I'd like to get back to that whenever I choose to run without my shirt on. Some people ask me, why do you keep going back to Hyrox? Why do you keep doing it over and over and over again, year after year, same places, same exercises, same thing? Why do you pay all that money to do it? Continuously training for a goal, then another goal, and then another goal means that it keeps me very close to this physique. Now, I don't look like this all year round. Sometimes it gets a little bit softer. But as I then prepare, as it gets close to the event, as it gets more intense, my sort of base physique sharpens up to something like this. And with another event always on the horizon, it keeps me like this. And now I've been like this for the best part of 3 years. So I can't think of an exercise routine or a diet that would keep you in shape similar to this, better than this. Getting to this shape in your mid-40s is always going to be a little bit tough. But not letting it go is important, right? You don't just let it slip away. With having reoccurring goals, you've always got something else to train for. And I think that's probably the best thing you could ever do. It's very easy to only have one goal, but as human beings, we are pre-programmed to give everything a lifespan, a start, a middle, and an end. A lot of people will simply give up after the end, the finish line. Having reoccurring goals just means that you are continuously training for the very next thing. Now, like I said at the beginning, none of this is me telling you what to do. This is simply what I did, what I continue to this day. I'm in my mid-40s and I have a body that looks like this. Yeah, sure, I don't go the fastest, but walking away from a Hyrox event with a physique like this, I might as well have won. So I'd be really interested to find out if other people have been on a similar journey to me. Have you gone into Hyrox? Have you committed to the training? Has your physical body, has your appearance, the aesthetics of you changed over time? Has it sort of adapted to what you are doing? Drop some comments down below. It's always really good to have conversations about this stuff. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Please give this channel a subscribe. It really helps me out, and I will see you in my next video soon. All right, Mart out.